Malagi, tell us where we are now and why we're here.
We're at the Five Lamps in Dublin, which is one of the intersections as you're leaving the city to go northwards. People have marched up to here from East Wall and Sheriff Street, and we've met at this junction. We're here, and you can hear the crowd in the background there. We're here because the government is dumbing down and escalating this problem. Today we see that there's apparently 120 Somalians gone into a community hall in Ockram Street, which is not too far from here. We talk about them putting people into Prussia Street, into another community centre there. So it seems the government is taking facilities away now from ordinary people, like community centres and facilities where young people have their various activities after school, youth clubs and all of those kind of things, and they're just taking them away to pursue this idiotic policy of importation of mainly economic migrants. Everything we have said since last November has been now shown to be correct. We said there were unvetted or people coming in without any documentation. So the government admits that, even RTE admits that now at this stage. We have said that there's not enough housing in the country to house people. That is a fact.
Was it incredible, the statistics there last week, that on prime time they said before that 40% of people coming in had no documents. Now we find on prime time last week, 60%. Over 60% of those coming into the country have no documents at all.
Yes, and that's...
it doesn't even include the false documents.
That from Dublin Port, they don't know what figures are correct for there. But, you know, it beggars belief that a government is so intent on destroying its own country for whatever reasons. And, you know, we have... At every level in this country, the system doesn't work. We've thousands of, hundreds, almost 1 million people, in fact, on hospital waiting lists. The figure today, and there's updated figures to come tomorrow, for people in emergency accommodation, our own national citizens, is 11,500, of which over 3,000 are children. How is it acceptable that we bring in people from all over the world and house them, and at the same time tell our own children to
We've been left behind here, Malagi.
We're moving on here.
We'll walk on. That's the story of my life. Been left behind.
Well, we're moving up towards the quays here now.
One thing which I think is under discussed in this whole scenario is that last year we know that there's 285,000 new PPS numbers. Only 60,000 of those went to actually Irish people, which meant 220,000 non-nationals came into Ireland last year. The vast majority of those are economic migrants who come through EU open borders, and they're economic migrants.
And the vast bulk of those numbers will be used to access welfare payments rather than be for people from European countries who are coming in here to work.
Yes.
And what we have now is, we've all heard about Calais and the migrant camps there. Cherbourg is going to be the new Calais, solely for people to make their way into this country via Rosslare. And that is the next problem that we're going to have to face.
If the British bring in this whole thing about deporting a crowd off to Rwanda, Ireland, as an English-speaking country, will be the obvious port of choice for a lot of people.
And what they've also done is that the welfare system in this country is far better than it is in Britain. And we have had a minister responsible for all this, Minister O'Gorman, Roderick O'Gorman, who said and tweeted it in umpteen different languages that come to Ireland and we'll give you your own house in 3 months. You know, if I was outside of this country, I'd come here. You know, it's madness. And we say to our own young people, we'll educate you here and then get on a plane, because you'll never be able to buy or rent any accommodation for yourself.
No, you've put that very well. So we are, as we're importing all these people, low-skilled people, many of them who come here to take welfare and actually won't contribute at all, but they're low-skilled. At the same time, because our young people, demand of housing goes up, our young people can't afford a house, and they are forced, obviously, often graduates and well-educated young Irish people are then forced to emigrate.
It beggars belief that we had 70 NGOs last week taking part in a fiasco, in a pretend march that said they were concerned about housing and all of the other social issues when they're not. Their sole concern is protecting their own jobs, backed up by the political elite. And indeed, we had the Green Party, who are a government party, who seem to forget that they're a government party, protesting about their own policies. And no doubt there were some Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael people in the crowd just had their heads down. But these people care nothing about this country, care nothing about our nation. And they're there just to pursue their own idiotic agendas. And remember that there's over 33,000 NGOs in this country who get paid almost $7 billion to set government policy. I mean, yesterday or this week, we had the lunacy of government talking about banning cigarettes and at the same time setting up a citizens' assembly to legalise cocaine. I mean, where would you get it? We have politician after politician tripping over themselves now to tell us how they used to do drugs when they were young. The real reason actually that they want to decriminalise or legalise cocaine and other drugs is because half of them are banging it up their nose at the weekends themselves.
I seen, do you know what's really impressive, Malachy, is that this thing, East Wall protest and other protests which have grown up around Dublin, the number of people here, look at that, look. Like, that is a fine crowd of people. It's a big crowd, like.
And East
and the
Wall
numbers
has
are
been
keeping up.
The inspiration. East Wall is the Easter Rising of this generation. And it has shown leadership right from the start of this. When the people in East Wall came out last November on their own, now we have areas all over this city growing by the day and all over this country.
And all around the country. There was one there, RD 3 weeks ago, 200 people, Drogheda there, 120 people. It's like in Cavan, Monaghan, it's growing all over the place.
And we have given
Galway
the inspiration to people to stand up and not be afraid, to stand up and say enough is enough, that we don't have the capacity for these government policies, and government has to change their policy, and they will.
Because it's growing. And like this is maintained, and it's growing around the country. It's fantastic. I'll tell you what, we'll leave you in peace, but I'll show you.
Thanks very much, Aaron.
The people. People can see it. It's a very fine crowd. So there we go, from East Wall, 5 Lamps, speaking to Malachy Steenson, who's the main organiser here in the East Wall. We're coming up here now to, can I reverse it? We're coming up to Connolly Station, and you can see the crowd here. So it's over and out here from myself tonight. Been a busy day after I was up in court, as I said earlier, for organised anti-lockdown protest November 2020. And the second charge was for failing to follow the instructions of a Garda. But when they seen the affidavit, I think when they saw the affidavit that I put in, and they saw the arguments that were made, I think they wanted to drop this case like a hot cake. And they came over and offered, look, make a little donation, the whole thing, we'll call it quits, and it's all over, and there'll be nobody guilty, must strike out the case. They wanted to drop it like a hot cake, so happy days for me. It was better than paying $5,000 or 6 months in jail. And the right to protest fully protected. So there we go, I'm happy with that. So look at that. There we go, if you can see it. There you go, over and out from Connolly Station now. Slanas panicked, Scora Margaretson.